It is a Tuesday afternoon. You are standing in a coffee shop. The line is 3 people deep. You have been here 100 times. You know the order. You know the price. $7.40. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a thought flickers. What if I did not buy this? Most people swat that thought away like a mosquito. Too small to matter. Too annoying to entertain. They order the drink, they tap the card, they move on. But what if that thought was the most financially important thought you ever had? Not because coffee is the enemy. Not because lattes are a conspiracy against your retirement. That whole argument is tired and wrong, and we are not doing it here. What if the thought mattered for a completely different reason? What if it was not about the coffee at all? What if it was about the moment itself? The pause. The choice. The fork in the road that most people never even notice they are standing at. Because here is what no one tells you. The math of your financial life is not determined by big decisions. It is not the house or the car or the business. Those things matter, but they are obvious. Everyone knows those are big. It is the invisible decisions. The automatic ones. The ones you make on a Tuesday afternoon in a coffee shop without blinking. This video is about what your life looks like if you start blinking. Let us be honest about something first. Most personal finance advice treats you like you are broken. Like the reason you do not have money is because you have a character flaw, because you lack discipline, because you need motivation. That is not what this is. The reason most people never build meaningful wealth is not a discipline problem, it is an architecture problem. The way modern spending is designed, it is not neutral. It is engineered. Every checkout button, every one-click purchase, every notification that your card is about to expire has been optimized by people with PhDs in behavioral psychology to get your money out of your hands as fast and as painlessly as possible. You are not fighting your own weakness. You are fighting a trillion-dollar industry designed to make spending feel effortless. Saving, investing, building wealth, that has no such industry behind it. Nobody has hired a behavioral psychologist to make your index fund purchase feel as satisfying as unboxing a new pair of shoes. That infrastructure does not exist on that side. So the question is not whether you are disciplined enough. The question is whether there is a system. A simple, almost mechanical system that intercepts the moment between wanting to spend and actually spending, and does something completely different with it. There is such a system. It is not new. It is not secret. But when you actually run the numbers on it, it is genuinely disturbing. In the best possible way. Every purchase begins with a feeling, not a decision. A feeling. You feel bored and you open a shopping app. You feel stressed and you drive to the mall. You feel celebratory and you book the nicer hotel room. You feel like you deserve it, and suddenly you are upgrading to the premium version of something you were using fine for free 3 minutes ago. Behavioral economists have a name for this. They call it the pain of paying. And for most of human history, that pain was actually a useful friction. When you had to hand over physical coins or paper bills, your brain registered a small loss, a tiny sting. Research shows people spend measurably less when paying in cash versus card, and even less when paying with card versus a stored digital wallet, and even less with a stored wallet versus a phone tap. Each layer of abstraction reduces the perceived pain, which means each layer of abstraction increases how much you spend. Right now, right this moment, the most frictionless payment systems in the world are working to eliminate every last molecule of that sting. Amazon has a patent on purchasing in a single click. Some platforms now let you buy with a glance. A biometric confirmation. A blink. The sting is almost gone, and with it goes the pause. The fraction of a second where your brain might have said, "Do I actually need this?" The system we are going to talk about is essentially about restoring that pause. On purpose. And then weaponizing it. Here is the core idea. It sounds almost comically simple. Every time you feel the urge to spend money on something that is not a genuine necessity, you do not just resist it. You redirect it. You take whatever you were about to spend and you invest that amount instead. That is it. That is the whole mechanism. But the precision of the execution matters enormously. So let us walk through exactly how this works in practice. You are browsing online. You add $60 worth of things to a cart. Instead of checking out, you close the tab. You open your brokerage account or your investment app of choice. You transfer $60. You buy an index fund. Done. You have not saved $60. You have converted $60 of consumption into $60 of compounding. The difference is not trivial. It is the difference between spending $1 and planting a tree. Now here is where it gets interesting. Most people who try this once notice something unexpected. The urge does not disappear, but it transforms. Because you still have to make the investment actively. You still get to do something with the money. You still get the small dopamine hit of taking an action. But the action now has a completely different consequence. Spending money is a one-way door. You give it away, and it is gone. Investing money is a door that opens into a larger room. You give it away, and in 10, 20, 30 years, you get back something much larger. The behavioral hook is real. You are not saying no to yourself. You are redirecting yourself. And that distinction matters more than most people realize. All right, let us actually look at what this produces. Because this is where the conversation stops being philosophical and starts being genuinely unsettling. The average American household spends somewhere in the range of $17,000 per year on what economists classify as discretionary spending. That is everything that is not housing, food, transportation, and basic utilities. Clothing beyond necessity. Entertainment. Subscriptions. Dining out beyond sustenance. Gadgets. Home decor. The stuff you buy when life is working fine and you want it to feel slightly better. $17,000 per year. Now, what if you redirected even half of that? Not all of it. Half. $8,500 per year. At a historical average stock market return of around 10% annually, which is the long-run return of a broad index fund before inflation, here is what $8,500 per year becomes. In 10 years, $145,000. In 20 years, $540,000. In 30 years, $1.5 million. From the half of your discretionary spending you redirected. In 30 years, $1.5 million. That is not an accident. That is not luck. That is arithmetic working silently in your favor while you were busy living your life. But let us make this more personal. Because averages are abstract. Let us say you are 28 years old. You make an average income. You have a streaming service you forgot you subscribed to. A gym membership you use intermittently. A habit of ordering delivery food 2 or 3 nights a week. Some online shopping that happens when you are bored or stressed. A few impulse buys per month. If you added up all of that, you might find you are spending somewhere between $400 and $800 per month on things you did not plan to spend on. Let us use $500 as a middle estimate. $500 per month, redirected into a total market index fund from age 28 to age 65, 37 years of investing, at 10% annualized return. $3 million. $3 million from $500 a month. From the money you were already spending. The money you already earned. The money you already had. The money that was already leaving your hands. You did not need to earn more. You needed to redirect. Now, before this starts to sound like a motivational poster, let us interrogate it honestly. 10% annual return. Is that realistic? Over long time horizons, yes, the historical data supports it. But markets are not a straight line. There are decades where they go nowhere. There are crashes that wipe out 30, 40, 50% of your portfolio's value in a matter of months. There are years where the news makes it feel like the whole structure is about to collapse, And honestly, sometimes you are not sure it will not. Staying invested through those periods is where the theoretical math and the human reality diverge. Most people do not stay invested. Most people panic. They pull money out at the bottom and put it back in at the top, which is mathematically the opposite of what creates wealth. The redirect system actually helps with this, interestingly, because if you have been building the habit of investing incrementally, a little at a time, you tend to be more psychologically attached to the process than to the balance. The balance going down feels less catastrophic when the habit going up feels more important. But let us also acknowledge the inflation piece. 10% nominal is around 7% real once you adjust for inflation, which changes the outcome numbers by a meaningful amount, not catastrophically, but they come down. And let us acknowledge the tax piece. Investment gains are taxed. The exact rate depends on where you live, what accounts you use, and how long you hold. If you are using a tax-advantaged account like a retirement account, the math stays much cleaner. If you are using a taxable brokerage, it is more complicated. None of this destroys the thesis, but all of it should be factored in. The real outcome is probably smaller than the headline number. It is still transformative. It is still the best deal available to most people who are not wealthy yet. But it requires honesty about what the numbers actually represent. Here is where we have to take a breath. The internet is full of people selling the dream version of this idea. Retire at 40. Reach financial independence in 10 years. The math is always beautiful because the math is always chosen carefully. High return assumptions. No inflation, no taxes, no life interruptions, no medical bills, no divorce, no job loss, no period where you just could not do it for 6 months because things got hard. Real life has texture, and the texture is expensive. What the redirect system actually gives you is not a guarantee of a specific outcome. It gives you a structural advantage, a systematic direction, a default setting that works for you instead of against you. The baseline, without any intentional redirect, is this. You earn money. It passes through your hands. You live your life. You retire with approximately what Social Security provides, which in most countries is designed to prevent destitution, not to fund the life you actually wanted. That is the default path for most people. Not because they were irresponsible. Because the default path is consumption. The redirect does not make you rich instantly. It bends the default path. Gradually. Incrementally. In a direction that, over time, produces a fundamentally different outcome. The difference between the two outcomes, the default path and the redirect path, is measured in millions of dollars and degrees of freedom over a lifetime. But on a Tuesday afternoon, it looks like not buying a $60 thing you were browsing for. That gap between appearance and consequence is the thing most people never reconcile. The Tuesday decision looks small. The 30-year result looks enormous. They are the same decision. Let us be concrete about implementation, because good intentions without a mechanism produce nothing. The first principle is this. The redirect has to be immediate and automatic. If the gap between urge and redirect is too long, the urge wins. Human beings are not good at delayed execution. We are good at impulse. So you need to design a system where the redirect is the impulse, not the resistance. Practically, this means having an investment account that is already set up, already linked, already one step away. Not 3 apps and a bank transfer and a login you can never remember. 1 tap, 1 click. The same level of friction as spending. The second principle is that you are not trying to redirect everything. That is exhausting and unsustainable, and it will collapse in 3 weeks. You are looking for the impulse purchases, the unplanned ones, the ones that happen because of a feeling, not a need. A useful rule of thumb used by some practitioners of this approach is the sleep on it rule for anything over a certain threshold, say $50. If you still want it tomorrow, you buy it. If you do not, you invest the money. This alone, just inserting a 24-hour delay, has been shown to reduce impulse purchases by a striking margin. And most of the redirected money never gets spent on the original thing. The third principle is tracking. Not obsessively, but you should know at a glance what your redirect total is, what it has grown to. Watching a number grow is addictive in a useful way. It becomes its own reinforcement. You start protecting the number. You start feeling the same small sting about spending that used to be absent. You have rebuilt the pain of paying on purpose and redirected it toward your own future. What we have been talking about is, on the surface, a budgeting technique, a money habit, a personal finance hack. But it is pointing at something larger. The entire architecture of modern consumer economies is built on the velocity of spending. Not just your spending, everyone's spending. GDP measures consumption. Stock prices of retail companies depend on consumption. The business models of the most powerful technology platforms on Earth are funded by advertisements designed to increase consumption. When you redirect, even imperfectly, you are opting slightly out of that system, not in a dramatic or political way, in a quiet, individual, deeply effective way. And here is the irony. The same markets that benefit from your consumption also benefit from your investment. When you buy an index fund, you own a tiny slice of every company that wants you to consume more. You become, in the smallest possible sense, one of the owners. You shift from the person the system extracts from to the person the system works for. This is not idealism. This is the literal mechanics of how index investing works. You are buying fractional ownership of the economy itself, and the economy over long periods of time tends to grow, which means your ownership stake tends to grow, which means the redirect compounds not just your money, but your relationship to the entire economic system. Most people go through their entire financial lives on one side of that relationship. The system extracts from them. They earn, they spend, it flows outward. The redirect is a lever, a small one, but it changes which side you are on. There is a version of this that goes wrong, and it is worth naming. Some people discover the redirect and overcorrect violently. They stop spending on everything. They feel guilty for every purchase. They start treating their investment balance as a scoreboard for their moral worth. They deprive themselves of experiences and relationships and joys that money is perfectly good for funding. This is its own kind of financial dysfunction. Money is a tool. It is not a purpose. A life optimized purely for maximum investment growth at the expense of living is not a successful life. It is just a different flavor of broken relationship with money. The redirect is not about asceticism, it is about consciousness, about closing the gap between what you actually want and where your money actually goes. Some people discover when they actually look that they were spending a lot of money on things they did not particularly want, that the spending was habitual or emotional or just the path of least resistance. When they redirect those specific dollars, they do not feel deprived, because they were not getting much from those dollars anyway. Other people discover that some of their spending is genuinely meaningful. Meals with people they love, experiences that become memories, books and tools and courses that make them better. Those dollars should not be redirected. Those dollars are doing exactly what money is supposed to do. The redirect finds the money that was leaking, not the money that was living. The math is real. The behavioral research is real. The mechanism is simple and available to almost anyone with an income and an investment account and a 24-hour delay on impulse purchases. So why do so few people do this with any consistency? Part of the answer is information. Most people have never actually run the numbers on their own spending over 30 years. The gap between Tuesday's latte and retirement day is too wide for the brain to close intuitively. We are not wired for exponential timelines. Part of the answer is friction. The investment side still has more friction than the spending side, despite the improvement of financial technology. Spending has been optimized by armies of engineers. Saving has not received that same investment, which is ironic in a way that would be funny if it were not so consequential. But part of the answer is something harder, something that the math cannot solve. There is a real comfort in spending, a real, genuine, psychologically meaningful pleasure in buying something new, in the newness itself, in the brief moment before the thing becomes ordinary and the longing begins again. That pleasure is real. Investing offers a different pleasure, quieter, less visible. The pleasure of watching a number grow that you know is working for you. The pleasure of a future that looks slightly more secure. The pleasure of agency in a system that is otherwise quite happy to take from you. But it requires believing in that future. It requires trusting that the compound growth will arrive, that the market will recover, that you will still be there to receive it. And for a lot of people, that trust is the thing that is actually missing. Not discipline, not information, not even a mechanism. Trust. So the real question is not whether the math works. It does. The real question is whether you believe the future exists in a way that makes it worth building for. And that is not a question about finance. That is a question about something considerably more personal. Think about that the next time you are standing in line. Order whatever you want, but know that you had a choice.